Welcome to Beyond Borders, the Immigration Evaluation Podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Mariella Shibley, and this is where we simplify the process of immigration evaluations into clear, actionable steps. If you're a psychologist, therapist, or social worker wanting to add this life-changing service to your practice, hit that follow button and let's jump in. I remember when I first started doing immigration evaluations, I honestly felt completely overwhelmed. The paperwork, the interviews, the report writing, it just all seems so daunting. Now, over time, I learned a lot of strategies for streamlining the process and making it more manageable. And that's exactly what I want to share with you today. So in this episode, we're diving deep into the entire evaluation workflow, from that initial phone call to delivering the final report. We're going to cover everything from efficient scheduling and client communication to effective interview techniques. We'll talk about practical report writing tips and essential practice management strategies. So whether you're new to immigration evaluations or a seasoned pro, I'm confident that you will find valuable insights in this episode. My goal is to help you feel more confident and efficient in your work. So how do potential clients actually schedule an immigration evaluation? This initial contact is crucial. It sets the tone for the entire process, and it's often the first interaction that a client has with you, so very important to make it count. First and foremost, answer your phone. Or if you have support staff, ensure that they're trained to handle these calls effectively. If you're bilingual, a greeting in both languages is a welcoming touch. And perhaps most importantly, call people back. They're likely contacting multiple evaluators, so promptness is key. The sooner you respond, the better your chances of securing their business. Now here's a common challenge. Many potential clients aren't entirely sure what they need. They might know they need something for their immigration case, but the specifics are often fuzzy. So it's your job to guide them, to clarify whether they're seeking therapy, an evaluation, both. And if it's an evaluation, what kind? They might just say, an immigration case, which is far too broad. They'll say, my attorney told me to call and schedule an appointment. Okay, so then you need to become more kind of like a detective, right? You want to ask clarifying questions like, is this for a waiver, a pardon? Is it for you or for a spouse, for a relative? If it's for them, then you need to delve deeper. Like, is your case related to domestic violence? Were you a victim of a crime? Is it related to a former employer? So these questions help you pinpoint the specific type of evaluation that they need. If in doubt, of course, you can always get their attorney's phone number and call the attorney yourself and clarify what it is that they need, or you can instruct them to call their attorney and call you back. Another common misconception is residency versus citizenship. Clients often use these terms interchangeably. Well, not just clients, but a lot of people. And so they might say that they need something for citizenship, but what they really mean is residency, which drastically changes the type of evaluation. So if you hear citizenship, you think N648 versus other types of evaluations that have to do with residency. Now, ideally, the referring attorney would send some kind of detailed referral form specifying the case type, the deadlines, any other pertinent information, but unfortunately, this isn't always the case. So if the client seems confused or if something sounds off to you, then again, you have the option of advising the client to speak with their attorney to clarify the specifics of the evaluation needed, and then call you back once they have that information. And in this way, it empowers the client to take ownership of the process, and it ensures that they understand what's required. And if not, then you can get their attorney's number from the client and give them a call directly. I personally prefer calling attorneys directly because it allows me to gather more detailed information about the case and also to establish a direct connection, especially with new referral sources. It's also a valuable opportunity to build relationships and to ensure that everyone's on the same page. And it also saves the client a step. Now, you do want to make sure to explain to the client that you will be contacting their attorney. If you're uncomfortable contacting the attorney directly, then advising the client to call their attorney first is always a good starting point. Once we've clarified the type of evaluation needed, it's time to explain the process and schedule the appointment. And transparency is key here. Clients need to know what to expect. So I start by outlining the evaluation process. I explain that it typically involves a combination of psychological testing, that is questionnaires, and a clinical interview. And I give them a general idea of how long the appointment will take, which is usually a few hours. We say 3 or 4 hours, so they can plan accordingly. And this is especially important for clients who need to arrange time off from work or childcare. And then I describe the flow of the appointment, that we first do the testing, questionnaires, and then it's followed by the interview with the clinician. And then I explain that after the interview, I will draft a comprehensive report. I clarify how the report will be delivered. They can either receive a copy directly or I can send it to their attorney directly, whichever they prefer. Now, of course, there's a release of information section in our consent form that covers all these options. Then we discuss the practicalities, the cost of the evaluation, payment options, accepted payment methods. I'm upfront about the fees and any payment plans that we offer, because clear communication about finances avoids misunderstandings down the road. We also emphasize the importance of them coming to the evaluation alone. The evaluation process can take 3 to 4 hours on average, and it's just not comfortable for somebody to wait that long in a waiting room. And we also don't offer childcare, so we make it clear that children can't accompany clients to the evaluation. Now, of course, sometimes we do make exceptions in cases where that's absolutely not possible. Another practical reminder we give is to bring their glasses if they wear them. You'd be surprised how many people forget, even after being told that they're going to be filling out paperwork. Now, about scheduling. In my experience, it's often challenging for clients to attend multiple appointments. They have busy lives, work schedules, family responsibilities. So I try to make the evaluation process as efficient as possible by completing it in a single visit. Now, this approach works well for most of my clients. Now, some people prefer to split the evaluation into several shorter sessions or to include a separate feedback session. There's no one-size-fits-all approach to this. The most important thing is to find what works best for you and your clients. Once we've agreed on a date and time, I follow up with a confirmation email or text message. And this message includes our office address, a summary of the key information that we discussed, that it's like the cost, appointment duration, date, of course, and date and time of the scheduled appointment. I also attach a demographic form and consent form so they can review and complete them at their convenience. Now, while I send these forms in advance, I've found that most clients tend to fill them out when they arrive for their appointment. And that's perfectly fine. We can always complete them together when they come in. The important thing is that they have access to the information beforehand. Then 2 days before the scheduled appointment, we give the client a courtesy call to confirm. And this simple step can significantly reduce no-shows, and it allows us to address any last-minute questions or concerns that they might have. It's a small touch that shows that you value their time, and it reinforces your commitment to the appointment. Now, deposits. Some clinicians require deposit when scheduling an appointment, and that works well for their practice. Now, for me, in my experience, it hasn't been the most effective approach. Many of my clients prefer to pay in cash, often due to not having a bank account or credit card. And so asking them to make a separate trip just to leave a deposit creates an unnecessary burden. So I generally don't require a deposit. But if asking for a deposit works for your client base, by all means, implement it. Just make sure that you clearly communicate your deposit policy in writing, whether in an email or other documentation, including whether the deposit is refundable and what the cancellation policy is. Transparency is paramount to avoid any confusion or disputes later on. Some clinicians use electronic health records to manage appointments, to send reminders, to share paperwork, and these platforms often streamline the administrative process and can be very efficient. Now, I don't personally use an EHR system, but I've heard from colleagues that it can be a great way to manage client communication and the paperwork. So if you use an EHR, explore its features to see if it can accommodate appointment reminders, document sharing. A significant advantage of using an EHR is the ability to securely store and manage the client data. And some even have the functionality to upload your own forms, which is very useful. Now, speaking of forms, I make sure that all my paperwork is available in multiple languages to accommodate my diverse client base. This is essential for ensuring clear communication and understanding. So if you use an EHR, check if it allows you to upload and utilize forms in different languages. If not, you'll need to find other ways to make your forms accessible to all your clients. Now, the day of the evaluation has arrived. In our office, where we are fortunate enough to have ample space and staff, we schedule clients to arrive about an hour before their interview time. And this allows them to complete all the necessary psychological tests and questionnaires in a private, quiet room. This system works well for us because it allows a clinician to review the test results before the interview begins, making the interview process more efficient and focused. And it also frees us up to attend to other tasks while the client is working on their paperwork. Now, I understand that not all practices have the same resources or setup. If you don't have the space or staffing to accommodate this pre-interview testing, you'll need to adjust the process accordingly. Regardless of your setup, there's one absolute must not do. Never ever send psychological tests or measures to clients, whether by email, regular mail, or any other means. This is a serious violation of test security and professional ethics. You can send your own intake paperwork, but never the actual tests themselves. When the client arrives, we offer them water or tea and direct them to a comfortable, quiet space to complete their paperwork. Once they're settled, we briefly go over the tests and questionnaires, explaining what each one entails and answering any questions that they might have. Then when they're finished, they're ready for the interview. At the beginning of the interview, we always take a moment to ensure that we're on the same page. And I again explain that this is an evaluation, not treatment, and clarify who will receive the report. I also discuss limits of confidentiality, which is crucial, and it's another opportunity for the client to ask any questions they might have. Then we dive into the interview itself. These interviews typically last anywhere from 1.5 to 2.5 hours. If you're working with an interpreter, though, remember to double the estimated interview time, as everything will need to be repeated. Speaking of interpreters, that's a whole topic in itself, and we'll save that for a future podcast. Then during the interview itself, our clinicians use a structured intake guide, and this pretty much mirrors the format of our evaluation report, which makes transferring the information from the interview notes to the final report much smoother. In fact, I often type the report during the interview itself. This direct transcription method eliminates the need for separate note-taking and streamlines the entire process. It might not work for everyone, but it's an option to consider. Once the interview is complete, and assuming that no additional testing is required, then the client is free to go home. We reiterate that the report will be sent directly to their attorney unless, of course, they request a copy for themselves, in which case we make arrangements for them to receive it. We typically deliver the report electronically via email, but always through an encrypted server to ensure confidentiality and security. And the report itself is also password protected for an extra layer of protection. Along with the report, especially if it's a new attorney that we're working with, we include a copy of our CV. Attorneys often request this, so it's good practice to send it proactively. Occasionally, an attorney will request a hard copy with an original signature. While this is less common, again, we accommodate these requests. And in such cases, we arrange for the client to either pick up the report from our office or we mail it to them directly. Quick break. If you love what you're hearing and want to get started with immigration evaluations, grab my free introductory guide to immigration evaluations. It's linked in the description box, and it is packed with everything you need to know about the different types of evaluations, writing strong reports, and avoiding common pitfalls. Download it now. Now let's get back to the episode. Now let's talk about report writing. We employ several different techniques to make this process as efficient as possible. As I mentioned, the interview intake guide follows the same structure as a report, making transferring the information pretty straightforward. We also rely heavily on templates. We have pre-written blurbs for common sections of the report, like diagnostic descriptions or test explanations. For example, we maintain a document with descriptions of different diagnoses. And when we need to include a diagnosis in a report, we simply just copy and paste the relevant description. And the same goes for test descriptions. Another great way to streamline report writing is to reuse previous reports as templates. This can really save you a lot of time. But to organize this effectively, I recommend that keeping some kind of database, perhaps an Excel spreadsheet, of all your reports. And you will include key information like their client's last name, their gender, so that you know what pronouns are throughout the report, the type of case, and the diagnosis. So this allows you to just easily search for relevant templates and adapt them for the new clients, removing any client-specific or different information. And of course, you remove all the background details, test results, and then updating it with the new client information. A very common question that I get is, how long does it actually take you to write one of these reports? And the answer, as with many things, is that it depends. It depends on your writing experience, on your comfort level with report writing, and with the complexity of the case. However, from what I've gathered, the average report takes about 4 hours to complete. In my practice, we've implemented systems that allow us to significantly reduce that time, so we typically range between 1 and 2 hours per report. And this efficiency is a direct result of the strategies that we've discussed, like using the structured interview guide, the pre-written templates, and the practice of typing the report during the interview itself. Now, of course, some cases are more intricate and require more time, and there's no getting around that. But generally speaking, if you find yourself spending more than 5 hours on a single report, it's worth taking a closer look at your process. You might be either including too much unnecessary information, overthinking it, or perhaps even doubting your own capabilities. So trust yourself. Just get the initial draft down. You can always polish it later. In fact, I highly recommend writing at least the background section of the report immediately after the interview, while the information is still fresh in your mind. It's just so much easier to capture the nuances and the details when they're recent. If you wait a few days, you'll have to spend extra time reviewing your notes and trying to jog your memory, which just adds unnecessary time to the process. Finally, I want to touch on the use of AI in report writing. This is a rapidly evolving area, and we're still in the experimental phase. We're exploring different AI tools and techniques, and hopefully I'll be able to dedicate a future podcast episode to this topic as we learn more. So stay tuned. And then before any report goes out, I personally review and edit every single one. This is a crucial step, especially when you're starting out. I highly recommend having a colleague or supervisor review your reports as well. A fresh pair of eyes can catch errors that you might have missed, and they can also offer you valuable feedback on clarity and content. Even now, with years of experience, I still find it beneficial to have someone else take a look, particularly for complex or unusual cases. It's just an extra layer of quality control that ensures that the report is as strong and effective as possible. After this thorough review, I meticulously check for clarity, accuracy, completeness. I make sure that all the essential information is included, that there are no unnecessary details that could potentially jeopardize the case, and that the report is well written and professional. So only after this thorough review do I finalize the report and authorize its release. As I mentioned earlier, reports are typically sent directly to the referring attorney via our secure encrypted server. If the client requested a copy for themselves, then we, of course, provide that as well. Now, a note regarding payment. If a client has opted for an installment plan, we typically collect half the fees on the day of the evaluation, and the remaining balance is due when the report is finalized and ready for release. In my experience, clients have been very good about following through with their payments. Perhaps I've been fortunate, I don't know, but I believe that because these evaluations are so important to their immigration cases and because clients appreciate the work that we do, they're generally willing to pay for our services. Now, finally, let's talk about practice management. Because we handle a large volume of evaluations, meticulous record keeping is essential. We track all client information, the date the report was submitted, the referring attorney, any other relevant details, And this not only helps us manage our workflow, but it also provides valuable data. For example, it's helpful to know the total number of evaluations that you've conducted. You might be asked that if you ever testify in court. I also like to track which attorneys refer the most clients. Then at the end of the year, we send them a small token of appreciation, like a gift of cookies or something like that to our top referring attorneys. It's just a small gesture that goes a long way in building and maintaining professional relationships. Well, I think that pretty much covers the entire evaluation process, from scheduling to report delivery and practice management. If you can think of anything that I've missed, please feel free to leave a comment or send me an email. I appreciate you spending time with me today. Make sure to subscribe so you don't miss the next one. And if this episode helped you, share it with a friend. See you in the next episode.